The diner clock blinked 2:17 a.m., its digits flickering under the greasy glare of the overhead light. Stacy Miller, hair tied back with yesterday's scrunchie, wiped a half circle of coffee from the Formica counter. Rain tapped in uneven rhythms on the window beside her, each drop warping the neon
No, it
sign
can't
outside.
be. This isn't
Miller's
happening.
Diner, open late. Most nights, the place was a refuge for truckers and night shift regulars. Tonight, only a couple of empty mugs and a pie case half full with lemon meringue. Stacy moved through the motions, checking the napkin holders, refilling ketchup bottles, pausing to rub her mother's old silver bracelet with her thumb. The bracelet was tarnished and soft at the clasp, a thin whisper of the woman who'd worn it, now gone 2 winters before. A phone rang, sharp and out of place at this hour. Not her cell, the payphone near the door, the one that never rang unless someone was in trouble or lost. Stacy hesitated, glancing toward it, her hand still clutching the towel. The ring echoed across the tiled floor, past the line of bar stools bouncing off the glass case of homemade cookies. She set the towel down, took a breath, answered. The voice was thin, distant, blurred by static and urgency. "Stacy, it's your sister. You need to come home." Stacy's chest tightened. Home meant a house outside Ridgefield, Connecticut, and a family that had always felt like an unfinished puzzle, edges worn down, pieces missing. She pressed the receiver closer, her hand trembling. What happened? There was a beat of silence. Then, "Dad's gone. He passed late last night." The world contracted. The sound of rain grew sharper, as if someone had turned up the volume. Stacy didn't speak. Her gaze settled on the bracelet, the silver chain dull in the diner's fluorescent light. Her sister's voice pressed on, breathless, insistent. "We're all here. There's some business you need to take care of. He left you the gas station. Nothing else." The gas station, the family joke, an old relic off Route 12. Stacy could see the cracked pumps, the faded red awning. Her father hunched over an oil-stained ledger in the back office, refusing to upgrade the registers, refusing to sell, even when money was tight and everyone said it made no sense. "All you left me was this gas station?" she said, not really to her sister, but into the static itself. The words landed flat. There was a shuffling sound, voices in the background. Her brother, always impatient, urging her to decide, get it over with. Her sister's voice again, tense. "The developers want to buy. We need you to come sign, just make it quick, okay?" The line went dead. Stacy lowered the receiver, the click loud in the empty diner. She stood there a moment, listening to her own breath, the clock ticking, the hum of the fridge behind her. She wiped her hands on her apron and turned toward the window. Outside, the diner's neon glow painted the wet asphalt pink and blue, puddles glinting with reflected light. In her mind, she saw her father at the gas station, stubborn, hands grease-stained, arguing with the city inspector about permits and codes, always muttering about the things that matter and keeping something real in a world full of sellouts. The bracelet felt heavier now, as if it had absorbed the weight of the phone call. Stacy undid the clasp and turned it in her palm, studying the tiny notches from years of wear. The only thing her mother had left behind that hadn't vanished in an estate sale or slipped through her fingers. She imagined the station, silent at night, lights flickering, the old "open 24 hours" sign barely hanging on, a place nobody really wanted except maybe Stacy herself, though she'd never admit it. She grabbed her coat from the hook behind the counter and stepped outside. The rain had eased to a mist, the world smelling of oil and wet pavement. Stacy reached into her purse, and pulled out the station's old map, a relic her father had always kept folded in the glove box of his battered pickup. The paper was soft, corners frayed, dotted with her father's looping script. Oil lines, delivery dates, reminders scrawled in ink that had started to bleed. Under the yellow glow of the diner sign, Stacy traced the outline of the property. The pumps, the old service bay, the storage shed where she and her siblings used to play hide and seek. The pressure was already mounting. She could hear it in her brother's clipped instructions on the phone, see it in the way her sister's sentences collapsed into each other. All business. No room for grief. The diner door creaked as she stepped back inside. The silence felt different now, thick with decisions and old memories. She poured herself a mug of coffee, let the steam drift up, closed her eyes and listened to the gentle tap of rain against glass. She knew the next few days would be a blur of paperwork and arguments, lawyers and bankers, her siblings circling like hawks over whatever was left. But for now, there was only this moment. A silver bracelet, a map, and the low hum of a diner that had seen better days. Stacy looked at the faded lines on the map again, not sure what she was searching for. Maybe a sign, maybe a memory she could hold on to. Outside, a delivery truck rumbled past, tires hissing on wet pavement. The clock ticked 2:31. Stacy set the map down, fingers lingering on the edge, her thoughts circling the question she wasn't ready to answer. She stared at the bracelet in her hand, its weight familiar, grounding. The world outside was uncertain. In here, for one more night, she was just Stacy, waitress, daughter, someone balancing on the edge of what came next. The neon light buzzed overhead, and the rain began again, harder this time. She sipped her coffee and waited for the dawn. The sun barely cracked the horizon as Stacy's pickup wound along Route 12, the radio tuned low to a country station, the voices of morning DJs blurring into static. Her hands gripped the wheel tighter than usual, knuckles pale, the silver bracelet on her wrist rattling with each bump in the road. Coffee in a paper cup cooled untouched in the cup holder. The gas station stood silent in the weak dawn, shadowed by an overgrown maple. The sign, Miller's Gas and Repair, swung gently in the breeze. Stacy parked beside the cracked curb, engine ticking as it cooled, her breath fogging in the cab. For a moment she watched the mailbox, battered, blue, paint flaking, leaning like it might give up. Her father had fixed it every spring. Inside, the air was cold and smelled faintly of gasoline and old receipts. Light pressed in through streaked windows, illuminating the counter covered in stacks of mail. Red envelopes from the bank, legal documents with her name and her siblings, a realtor's business card. Stacy shuffled the papers, her gaze drawn to a yellowed photo behind the register. Her father, a little younger, one hand resting on the gas pump, the other steadying a small girl, herself, years ago, grinning, oil smudged on her chin. She traced the photo's edge, remembering the afternoons she'd spent here, counting change, fetching wrenches, sweeping leaves from the pump islands. Each memory felt close and sharp, their edges rough with regret and longing. Her phone vibrated, breaking the spell. Her brother's name flashed on the screen. She let it ring, the sound bouncing around the empty station until it stopped. A minute later, a text. "You need to call the lawyer. The buyer won't wait. Don't mess this up for everyone." Stacy exhaled slowly. She walked the perimeter, fingers trailing over metal shelves, faded posters, a row of spark plugs in a dusty case. Every step carried a weight, the future closing in. her siblings' voices ringing in her ears. Sell. Take the money. Move on. But the place didn't feel finished. There was something else here. Something stubborn and unfinished. Like her father himself. She paused by the back room. The door groaned on its hinges. Inside, the workbench was cluttered with tools, paint-stained rags, a faded Red Sox cap, cans of WD-40, a battered lunchbox still marked Miller. Stacy opened the lunchbox out of habit. Inside, only a few rusty screws and a half-eaten roll of mints. As she set the box down, her hand brushed a metal object buried beneath a tangle of cords. She pulled it free, a small brass key, worn smooth, heavier than it looked. No tag, no label. Just cold metal and a sense of something withheld. She sat on the workbench stool, thumb tracing the ridges of the key, her mind racing. She sifted through the rest of the drawer. Faded bills, a pile of receipts, an old Zippo lighter with her father's initials scratched into the side. She turned the key over, searching for a clue, something her father might have left, some last word or sign. The station phone rang, sharp and insistent. Stacy answered this time, the line crackling. Stacy Miller? This is Ed with First Ridgefield Bank. I'm calling regarding the outstanding loan on the property. We're running out of options here. Unless there's movement on the sale, we'll have to begin foreclosure proceedings within the week. She glanced at the pile of unopened envelopes, the red final notice stamped across the top. I need more time, she said, her voice steady, betraying nothing. Ed sighed. Not much time left, Stacy. I'm sorry. She hung up. For a moment she stared at her reflection in the window. Tired eyes, hair flattened by the drive, the silver bracelet bright against her wrist. She slipped the brass key into her pocket, then fished out her father's old flashlight from the drawer and headed toward the back hallway, past the bathroom, toward the door beneath the stairs. A thin line of dust marked the threshold. On the door, almost hidden by peeling paint, was an old brass lock. Stacy hesitated, the key heavy in her palm. She crouched, slipped it in. The mechanism turned with a soft, satisfying click. The door creaked open, revealing a set of wooden steps descending into darkness. The air changed, cooler, denser, carrying the scent of concrete and oil. She switched on the flashlight. The beam cut a narrow path down the stairs, catching cobwebs and the edge of an old shelf half buried in shadows. Stacy paused at the top, heart pounding, listening for footsteps, for any sign of her siblings, for her father's voice telling her to shut the door and forget whatever she thought she'd find. Instead, only silence, thick, expectant. She gripped the key tighter. If I sell, I lose everything Dad believed in, she whispered, the words dissolving in the empty room. The light trembled as she stepped onto the first stair, the key still warm from her hand. The door swung shut behind her, the lock clicking again, sealing her in. The world above, the angry voices, the pressure to sell, the looming bank, faded. Stacy moved forward, one step at a time, into the unknown her father had left behind. The basement steps groaned under Stacy's weight. Dust rose with each footfall, catching in the flashlight's beam, swirling before settling on concrete. The cold was sharper here, deep, silent, untouched by the morning sun. Old paint cans lined the shelves, labels worn blank. A workbench stretched across the far wall, pitted and stained, cluttered with boxes and jars of bent nails. A metal cabinet stood against the back corner, lock rusted through. Stacy nudged it with her boot. The door creaked open. She half expected mice. Instead, a folder tumbled out, landing at her feet with a soft thud. She knelt, flipping it open, her fingers moving slowly, reverent. Inside, bundles of bills, their paper stiff, faces unfamiliar. Next to them, a smaller tin box filled with coins and 2 old passports, pages stuck together with age and oil. She set these aside, drawn instead to a pile of envelopes sealed with tape. One was addressed to Miller, S., for emergencies only. Stacy stared, lips pressed thin, before carefully pulling it open. A codebook fell into her lap. Not a diary, but a dense ledger. Numbers and street names, written in her father's distinct looping script. Underneath, a stack of photos. Men and women outside the gas station. Cars with out-of-state plates. A faded image of her father in a suit she'd never seen before. Stacy sifted through it all, the cold biting her knees, the light trembling in her grip. Beneath the folders was a handkerchief, red and white printed with a baseball and the words, Ridgefield Little League Champions, her daughters. She recognized the faint marker scribble in the corner, Maddie 7. She pressed the cloth to her cheek, her other hand gripping the flashlight tighter. A sigh escaped her. The fear she'd carried down the stairs loosened a little. It wasn't much, but at least there was something here. Money, old secrets, a path forward, maybe just enough to buy time. She gathered the bills, wrapped them in the handkerchief, and tucked everything back into the tin. As she stood, a faint buzz sounded from her pocket. Stacy checked her phone, a number she didn't recognize. The display flickered, then stilled. She answered, more out of reflex than courage. Hello? Static, and then a voice, muffled, artificial. Don't speak. Listen carefully. We know what you found. You want your daughter to stay safe? You'll bring everything. No cops, no stalling. Stacy's throat tightened. She pressed her palm over her mouth, willing her breath to steady. The voice continued, flat and practiced. You have one chance. We'll be in touch. The line went dead. She stared at her phone, willing the silence to explain itself, to give her some hint, some thread to pull. Nothing. She looked around the basement at the old tools, the coded papers, the money that suddenly seemed less like an inheritance and more like a liability. The chill deepened, and she wiped her eyes with the handkerchief before stuffing it in her jacket. Upstairs, the world felt unfamiliar. The light through the grimy windows seemed colder. She checked the locks, peered through the blinds at the parking lot. A lone sedan idling across the street, windows fogged, its engine humming. The bank's foreclosure notice sat on the counter, unopened. Stacy set the tin beside her purse, her fingers tracing the Little League logo through the cloth. The bell over the front door jingled. Stacy startled, hand tightening around the flashlight. The mail carrier, in his blue windbreaker, set a stack of letters on the mat, gave her a wave, and disappeared before she could speak. Stacy walked the perimeter of the station, checking every window, every lock. She paused by the security camera, its red light blinking. She'd never paid much attention to it before, just another thing her father insisted was necessary. Now she wondered, who else was watching? She called Maddie's school just to hear her daughter's name on the line. Hi, it's Maddie's mom. Just checking. Everything okay today? Yes, Ms. Miller. Maddie's fine. She's in science now. Stacy thanked the receptionist, lingered on the sound of classroom voices in the background, then hung up. She returned to the counter, clutching the tin, the handkerchief still wrapped tight around the bills. The gas station felt smaller now, the walls pressing in. Her father's face stared back from the photo behind the register, his smile as enigmatic as ever. She sat on a stool, the wood cold through her jeans, and tried to focus. Bank notices, legal threats. Now this. Someone, somewhere, holding her daughter's safety as ransom for secrets she barely understood. "Who else knows about this?" she whispered, not expecting an answer. Outside, the wind picked up. The sedan across the street pulled away, taillights glowing red. A cloud of dust rose behind it, drifting over the cracked pavement. Stacy watched until the car vanished. She checked the time. Nearly noon. She was running out of options, out of time, out of places to hide. In her lap, the Little League handkerchief sat like a dare, a promise she wasn't sure she could keep. The security camera's light blinked. Stacy stared out at the empty lot, waiting for something, anything, to move. The threat as close as her own breath. The afternoon bled into dusk as clouds pressed low, making the sky look heavy and close. Stacy sat hunched over her father's battered ledger at the kitchen table in the station's cramped office. The bills and coded documents spread before her like a map of someone else's life. Every so often she glanced at the front window, watching the wind stir leaves across the parking lot, listening for the sound of Maddie's sneakers pounding up the concrete steps. She tapped her fingers against her coffee mug, lukewarm, nearly empty. Her phone vibrated, rattling across a stack of unpaid invoices. The text was brief, no number displayed. "Want your kids safe? Bring everything your old man left behind." The breath left her all at once. The mug clattered to the floor, rolling under the radiator. Stacy fumbled for her coat, searching for her car keys, her hands clumsy and slow. Maddie should have been at the after-school program by now. She dialed the school office, her heart drumming. A secretary answered, voice too calm. "Maddie Miller? She left with the others at 3, Ms. Miller. Didn't she make it home?" The phone nearly slipped from Stacy's hand. "Please check again. Her teacher, anyone. Is there a sign-out sheet?" Paper shuffling. Voices. Then a pause that lasted just a little too long. "I'm sorry, I'll try to reach her friends. Hold on." Stacy didn't wait. She was already running, the cold office air clinging to her as she pushed through the door, keys jangling. Her pickup fired up with a groan. She reversed hard, gravel spitting from the tires, and sped toward the Little League field 2 blocks away. The field was mostly empty now, a couple of coaches packing gear into their trunks, scattered echoes of laughter from a playground nearby. Stacy parked crooked, jumping out before the engine stopped, and dashed across the damp grass. Her breath came in quick, sharp bursts. She found Maddie's glove first, abandoned beside second base, the webbing frayed, Maddie's name written in green marker across the thumb. Stacy dropped to her knees, clutching it to her chest, scanning the field for any sign of her daughter. "Has anyone seen Maddie?" she called, voice fraying at the edges. One coach looked up, frowning. "She was here for practice, but her ride came early. Some woman said she was a family friend." Stacy's phone buzzed again. 30 minutes, alone, or she's gone for good. No number, just the text. She staggered back to her truck, still holding the glove, her mind racing through faces, neighbors, school moms, and anyone who might have noticed a stranger. Her phone battery flashed red, 9%. She tried Maddie's number again, straight to voicemail. The traffic lights at the corner seemed to blink too slowly, every second measured against the rising panic. Stacy pressed her forehead to the steering wheel. The glove smelled faintly of cut grass and dirt, The way Maddie did after a game, when Stacy would kneel and tie her shoes, brushing pebbles from her knees. She called James, her father's old partner, the number memorized from years of hearing it mumbled during late-night phone calls. "James, it's Stacy. Maddie's missing. Someone took her. They want what Dad left. I need your help." A pause. On the other end, a voice edged with caution. "Don't talk to the police. You can't trust anyone right now. I'll meet you at the station in 10. The sky had deepened to a blue-black by the time she returned to the gas station. The windows caught the last scraps of daylight. James was already there, waiting beside the back door, hands shoved deep in his jacket. He looked older than she remembered, shoulders slumped, hair thinner at the temples. Inside, Stacy laid out the cash, the documents, the code book, every piece of her father's legacy she'd found. James examined them without a word. He set aside a file, frowned at the tin box, then looked up. "They know more than you think. You need to be careful, Stacy. Your father trusted the wrong people before." There was a sharp knock at the door. A police cruiser idled outside, blue lights flashing but no siren. A young officer stepped in, eyes lingering on the files, on James, then on Stacy. "We've received a tip. Suspicious activity here. Do you mind if I look around?" James's jaw tightened. Stacy's hands found Maddie's glove, clutching it like a lifeline. "My daughter's missing," she said quietly. "Someone's threatening us." The officer's gaze softened for just a second, then hardened again, taking in the cash, the documents, the tension in the room. As the officer began his search, Stacy's phone vibrated again. 30 minutes. Alone. You know where." She looked at James. "What do I do?" He shook his head. "You're going to have to decide. Fast." Stacy stared at the glove in her lap, the green letters blurring. The sound of the officer's radio, the ticking of the station's old clock, and the distant whoosh of passing cars pressed in. A wall of ordinary life refusing to stop for her crisis. The final text came as she stood, determination hardening in her posture. "You want her back? Bring it all. 30 minutes. No mistakes." The sun was gone now. Stacy slipped the glove into her jacket, her jaw set, her eyes dry. She walked outside, the night swallowing her up as she made her way to her truck. The gas station's neon sign flickered overhead, stubborn and pale against the dark. The streets blurred past in the pickup's headlights, each suburban intersection stretching longer than the last. The dashboard clock blinked 6:12, but the world outside already felt sealed by darkness. Stacy's knuckles ached from gripping the wheel, the silver bracelet sliding loose as her hands trembled. The empty baseball glove rode shotgun, the smell of leather and dirt filling the cab. She circled the block near the abandoned playground, parking 2 streets away behind a row of trash cans. Her phone buzzed. Another message. No number. "Don't be late. One mistake. She's gone." Stacy let the phone fall into the cup holder. She reached behind the seat, fingers closing around the empty water bottle Maddie always left rolling there after practice. She squeezed it, the thin plastic crackling. For a second, she saw her daughter in the rearview mirror, hair falling in her eyes, arms crossed, always impatient for her mom to finish work. "You're slow, Mom. I'll protect you one day, okay?" The promise lived somewhere in the space between laughter and heartbreak. She stepped out into the chilly air. The houses lining the street had porch lights flickering, TVs glowing behind blinds, the dull, ordinary churn of family life. It felt impossibly far away. Stacy tucked the water bottle into her coat pocket and crossed the street. the bottle pressing into her side with each step, a silent, constant reminder. The playground was half swallowed by weeds. Rusted swings creaked in the wind. A torn plastic slide gleamed in the streetlight. Stacy kept her head down, counting her breaths. She checked her phone. 6 minutes left. She pulled out the tin box of cash and documents, checked the handkerchief knot, and tucked it beneath her arm. The code book was zipped inside her jacket. As she moved, her eyes darted across the shadows. Every bush, every parked car, another threat. A noise behind her, shoes scraping on gravel. She froze, breath held. "Stacy?" James's voice, low, cautious. He stayed half in shadow. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "You either." He held up his hands, empty. "I checked the perimeter. No police, no neighbors. But I need to tell you something. Your father never trusted me completely. There were things he thought I might have done. I only want to help now." Stacy looked at him, unsure. The silence between them pulsed. Unfinished business, old wounds, suspicion. "I have no one else," she said finally, voice flat. A car door slammed somewhere nearby. Headlights flashed once, then off. Stacy tucked the tin box deeper under her arm. James stepped back into the darkness. "I'll watch from here, but if you see anything strange, just run. Don't wait for me." Stacy nodded and moved toward the meeting point, the back gate of the playground, half broken and squeaking in the wind. Her phone buzzed, this time a call. "Don't talk. Leave the box at the merry-go-round and walk away. Your daughter's close. No tricks." The voice was distorted, genderless. Stacy stared at the empty playground, the merry-go-round spinning slightly in the wind. She hung up, the phone's battery flashing red. The world narrowed. The cash in the tin, the code book heavy in her jacket, the water bottle cold against her ribs. She set the tin down on the peeling blue paint of the merry-go-round and backed away. Her eyes never left the shadows. A movement. A small figure darted between the swings. Stacy's breath caught. But a taller shape blocked her view, masked and silent. James shouted from the fence, "Get back! It's a trap!" The masked figure lunged for the tin. Stacy started forward but froze as another car screeched to a stop behind her. Headlights lit up the scene. The playground was washed in harsh white light. A window rolled down. Her brother's voice, tight, angry, echoed out. "What are you doing, Stacy? You can't handle this alone. Just give them what they want." She stared, stunned. Her brother, shoulders hunched, eyes darting, wasn't here to help. He was here because he had to be. Another figure approached, gun visible beneath a jacket. James yelled again. The world splintered. Shouts, the squeal of metal, the slap of sneakers on wet grass. Stacy ducked behind a climbing frame. Her phone slipped from her hand and shattered against the concrete. The tin was gone. The masked figure ran for the far gate. In the chaos, Stacy caught a flash of Maddie's red hoodie by the far fence. She bolted, dodging James, her brother, the masked figure's shadow. She reached Maddie, grabbed her hand, and yanked her into the dark. For a second, everything went still. The streetlights flickered overhead. Maddie pressed the empty water bottle into Stacy's palm, her fingers shaking. "I tried to run, Mom," Maddie whispered. Stacy squeezed her daughter's hand, the bottle between them. She turned to face the others, James, her brother, the criminals scattered in the dark. The station, the secrets, the betrayal, all of it pressed in. "I can't trust anyone," she murmured, voice barely a breath. "Not even family." She pulled Maddie close and, ducking low, vanished with her daughter into the shadows behind the playground, the empty water bottle rattling softly, reminder of a promise and a new beginning. The sky above Ridgefield was colorless, a thin gray sheet pressing down on the roofs and trees. Stacy parked the pickup around the corner from the gas station, engine idling, Maddie curled up on the passenger seat, with knees hugged tight. The heater wheezed, doing little to fight off the morning chill. Across the street, the station's neon sign flickered weakly, casting an anemic blue glow across the oil-stained lot. Stacy's phone was dead, its screen spiderwebbed and useless. She'd wrapped it in Maddie's hoodie, stashed it in the glove box, trying to keep things feeling normal. She reached for the rag doll Maddie always carried, a faded thing with mismatched button eyes and threadbare limbs. Maddie clutched it to her chest, silent. "Stay here. If anyone knocks, don't open the door," Stacy said, voice steady. She handed Maddie the doll, tucking the tiny recorder, her father's old spy gadget, deep inside its stuffing. "Squeeze her hard if you're scared. She's stronger than she looks." The child's eyes lingered on Stacy's face, searching for reassurance. Stacy brushed hair from Maddie's forehead and closed the door gently behind her. She crossed the street, pulling her jacket tighter. Inside the station, the stale air smelled of burnt coffee and rubber. The walls, cluttered with years of service stickers and faded oil company calendars, closed in around her. James was already waiting, his back to the window. He didn't look up when she entered, just nodded toward a battered metal chair. "They want the originals. You have copies?" She slid a folder across the table, every page a duplicate. Careful work by flashlight and shaking hands the night before. James skimmed the papers, lips tight. "We'll use these. The real files stay hidden. You make the trade, get Maddie, then walk away. Elena's tracking them. She worked with your dad, knew how to disappear. She'll follow whoever picks up the bait." Stacy nodded, flexing her hands in her lap. The silver bracelet glinted beneath her sleeve. The battered lunchbox holding the real documents and code book sat hidden behind the register, beneath old receipts. A knock rattled the front door. Stacy tensed, but it was only Elena, short, brisk, with cropped gray hair and the wary eyes of someone who'd spent a lifetime watching her back. "Swaps at the old playground behind here, 10 o'clock sharp," Elena said, glancing at her watch. "We'll stay close. You hand over the folder, keep it simple. If they get jumpy, you buy time. James and I cover you." A siren wailed faintly in the distance. Stacy looked out through the smeared glass. Across the lot, a city council car had parked by the curb. Two men in navy jackets stood talking, faces serious. "They're from City Hall," James muttered. "They want the land. If this goes south, they'll seize everything." Stacy stared at the paperwork stacked on the counter. Late taxes, zoning violations, warning letters. The station, her father's life, reduced to numbers on city letterhead. She swallowed hard. "We end it today." She checked her watch. 10 minutes left. She walked out the back, through the alley littered with soda cans and scraps of old tires, the sound of Maddie's voice echoing in her mind. "Mom, promise you'll always come back." She held the rag doll tighter. The playground behind the station was emptier than usual. The chain-link fence rattled in the wind. A single swing twisted slowly, scraping metal against metal. Stacy's boots left damp prints in the sand as she crossed to the meeting spot, a bench beneath the broken jungle gym. A black SUV pulled in, its windows tinted. Two figures stepped out, one tall, one slight, both faces hidden by ball caps and scarves. Stacy kept her shoulders back, the folder pressed against her chest. You got the files? The taller one's voice was flat. She nodded, holding up the folder. First, I see Maddie. A pause. Then the back door of the SUV opened. Maddie sat inside, hugging her knees, face streaked with dirt, eyes wide and alert. Stacy's grip on the doll tightened, thumb pressing the recorder's hidden button. She forced herself to breathe. Bring her here. No deal until I see she's safe. The short one hesitated. Stacy met their gaze, steady, unwilling to blink. Finally, Maddie was pulled from the car, led to the edge of the lot. Stacy could see her daughter trembling, could hear the click of her teeth in the wind. You want the files? Stacy's voice didn't shake. Let her go now. They exchanged glances, then shoved Maddie forward. Stacy sprinted, grabbing her daughter, pushing the doll into her arms, whispering, Hold her tight. Don't let go. The folder of fake documents changed hands. Behind her, Elena moved through the shadows, phone raised, snapping photos. James stepped forward, eyes locked on the criminals as they rifled through the folder. Stacy crouched beside Maddie, hands shaking as she checked her daughter over. The doll's recorder whirred silently, every word captured. The deal was done, but Stacy's body remained tense, every muscle waiting for what might come next. She held Maddie, pressing her face into the child's hair, breathing in the scent of sweat and tears. The playground, the station, the city councilman, everything felt paused, the outcome uncertain, as if the world itself held its breath. The wind picked up, pushing broken leaves across the playground as Stacy kept Maddie pressed tight to her side, crouched behind the low jungle gym. Maddie's hands clung to the rag doll, knuckles white, the button eyes glinting in the late morning sun. Stacy wiped a streak of dirt from her daughter's cheek with her thumb, her other hand slipping the tiny recorder deeper into the doll's stuffing. Behind them, Elena's footsteps were soft and quick across the gravel. She stopped beside the bench, phone in one hand, gaze sweeping the parking lot, reading faces, noting movements. James kept back, just beyond the reach of the chain-link fence, jacket zipped to the throat, his jaw set. The two strangers with the SUV thumbed through the folder. Pages snapped in the wind, a few flapping loose and skittering away. The taller one, restless, impatient, turned, voice sharpened by suspicion. This isn't all of it. Where's the rest? Stacy stood slowly, placing herself between the men and her daughter. She let her hand rest on Maddie's shoulder, steadying both of them. That's everything my father left, she said. Take it. Let us go. The short one stepped forward, eyes flickering with uncertainty. He reached for Stacy's wrist, catching a glimpse of the silver bracelet beneath her sleeve. You're lying, he hissed. There's more. You're going to show us. Elena, standing just a few feet behind, slipped her phone into her pocket and pressed a finger to her earpiece. She edged closer to James, her shoulder brushing his. A car passed on the street behind, slow and curious. Suddenly, the taller stranger grabbed Stacy by the arm, twisting hard, voice rising. If you're playing games, it's your kid who pays. Maddie let out a short, gasping sound, half a cry, half a plea, as Stacy wrenched free, pushing her daughter behind her. A new sound broke the standoff, the long wail of a siren, close and getting closer. The SUV's doors flew open. The short one yelled, "Move, now!" They bolted for the vehicle, dropping half the folder's pages across the sand. Elena surged forward, reaching into her jacket for the small remote she'd shown Stacy earlier. A backup plan, her father's idea, repurposed from an old burglar alarm. She thumbed the switch. Instantly, A piercing alarm howled from inside the gas station across the alley, lights flashing red through the windows. Police cruisers rounded the block in a sudden swarm. The playground filled with the scream of sirens, radios barking, officers fanning out with hands raised and guns drawn. James dropped to his knees, palms open, eyes fixed on the ground. The two men from the SUV tried to reverse, tires spinning in the loose gravel, but Elena had blocked the exit with her own battered sedan. Officers shouted, closed in, forced them out of the car, hands on their heads, faces pressed to the hood. Stacy pulled Maddie tight, kneeling beside her. Maddie buried her face in the rag doll, silent now. The police swept through the playground and parking lot, herding bystanders away, collecting folders, bags, anything that might be evidence. The chaos pressed in. 100 small noises, the crunch of boots, the low drone of radios, the rush of wind tugging at Stacy's hair. A detective, broad-shouldered, his tie askew, knelt beside them. "Are you hurt? Is this your daughter?" Stacy nodded, her throat too tight to speak. She pressed the rag doll into Maddie's arms, her fingers brushing the spot where the recorder was hidden. The detective's radio crackled. "We've got the tapes," someone reported. "Audio's good, clear voices, clear threats. Looks like the Miller girl's been telling the truth." James rose slowly, helping Elena to her feet. The police separated the crowd, cuffed the men from the SUV, collected the scattered papers. The folder of fake documents was bagged as evidence. The real codes, the real legacy, still safe, tucked away where only Stacy knew. Stacy crouched low, holding Maddie as the world spun and settled around them. The din faded. Sirens receded. The gas station, visible through the fence, smoked quietly. An old sign of trouble. A new symbol of survival. James, face drawn, approached with Elena. "You did it, Stacy. You brought her back." Stacy nodded. She pulled Maddie close. "We're not just survivors," she whispered, her voice caught somewhere between exhaustion and defiance. "We're fighters." She pressed the rag doll into Maddie's hands, the recorder silent now, a promise kept, a secret traded for safety. Mother and daughter, surrounded by strangers and flashing lights, knelt together in the middle of the battered playground, breathing in the smell of cut grass, gasoline, and the first sense of relief. From a distance, the gas station sign flickered, then steadied. For the first time in weeks, Stacy felt the world pause, if only for a moment. The day after the sirens faded, the gas station looked battered and worn, its windows smeared with ash and handprints. The old Miller's Gas and Repair sign still flickered, but 2 bulbs were out, casting the lot in a tired, uneven light. Stacy moved quietly through the debris, her steps measured, shoulders slightly stooped, Maddie trailing behind with the rag doll swinging from her fist. Yellow tape flapped in the breeze, strung between the pump islands and the front doors. Police had gone, leaving behind a mess, scattered folders, muddy footprints, the chalk outlines of a night that would be replayed in memory, but rarely discussed aloud. Stacy bent to pick up a piece of broken glass near the office door. Her palms stung, a thin red line marking where the shard bit into her skin. She pressed her thumb to the cut, then wiped it on her jeans, leaving a faint, dark smear. The gesture was automatic, left over from years of cleaning up after others. She paused at the counter, where a single scrap of silver caught the morning sun, a piece of her mother's bracelet, bent nearly in half. She lifted it with care, brushing away a crust of dried mud, holding it up so the light could find it. The jagged edge pressed against her palm, not quite drawing blood. Maddie climbed onto a stool, her sneakers squeaking against the vinyl. She stared out the window at the empty lot, lips pressed together, saying nothing. The rag doll sat upright on the counter beside her, one button eye missing, the mouth stitched crooked. A car pulled up at the curb. Stacy tensed, but it was only the mail carrier, shoulders hunched against the wind, dropping a bundle of envelopes through the slot. She waited for him to leave before crossing to gather the mail. Bills, official letters, a single hand-addressed envelope with no return address. She set it aside. By midday, the town's rumor mill had spun itself raw. Neighbors paused at the edge of the property, their glances quick and curious. A man in a suit from the city council showed up with a clipboard, shaking his head at the damage. "We'll need a full inspection," he said, voice flat. "Insurance won't cover all this. And with the outstanding taxes, well, it's complicated." Stacy listened without argument, hands folded, the broken bracelet cool and solid in her pocket. The man left, boot heels sharp against the cracked pavement. Inside, Maddie sorted through a box of odds and ends. Old spark plugs, faded postcards, a photo of her grandfather standing behind the counter, cap askew, eyes crinkled in a rare smile. Stacy joined her, brushing dust from the picture frame. The two sat in silence, elbows touching. In the days that followed, word arrived from the authorities. Stacy would not be charged, not this time. But the station's ownership would remain in limbo until the investigation closed. A federal agent in a gray sedan stopped by, not unkind, his questions gentle but persistent. "We could use your help," he said, voice quiet. "Your father's legacy, what he tried to protect, matters. You'd be helping the country, in a way." She shook her head, more out of habit than conviction. "I can't leave. Not now. Maddie's school, this place." She trailed off, letting the unfinished sentence hang between them. He handed her his card, said he'd be in touch, then disappeared down the street, his car blending with afternoon traffic. With nowhere else to go, Stacy swept the station floor, tossed out broken glass, taped the cracked window. She found herself returning, again and again, to the broken bracelet. At night, she sat with Maddie on the old office couch, the radio tuned low to a station playing country songs from another decade. The bracelet lay on the table between them, its curve incomplete. One evening, as rain drummed against the roof, Maddie picked up the bracelet and an old rubber band from a drawer. She handed both to Stacy, her face open, waiting. Stacy looped the band through the broken ends, knotting them together. The repair was crude, but it held. She fastened it around her wrist, the weight of silver and elastic a strange comfort. Outside, headlights rolled past, momentarily painting the walls in gold. Maddie curled under Stacy's arm, thumb hooked through the doll's belt loop. Stacy looked down at the bracelet, the brokenness made whole, if only for now. The gas station, damaged but standing. Her daughter, silent but safe. Nothing was simple or easy, but something remained. In the quiet, the only sound was the slow, steady tick of the wall clock and the soft breathing of the child at her side. Stacy leaned back, eyes half closed, and let the night settle around them. June in Ridgefield brought a slow, golden warmth, the kind that seeped into the floorboards of the gas station and loosened the dust. The windows were finally clear again, sunlight pooling on the scuffed tile. A row of American flags, each no bigger than Maddie's hand, lined the flower beds Stacy had planted out front. Daisies pressed against the glass, stubborn in the heat. Most mornings started the same. Stacy filling the coffee pot, Maddie dragging her backpack across the floor, the two of them moving around each other in the gentle choreography of people learning how to live together again. Sometimes Stacy would catch Maddie studying the old bracelet on her wrist, the silver dulled, the rubber band holding it together, a new addition in a long line of makeshift fixes. The gas station wasn't busy, but people returned. Mrs. Roth from down the street pulled in with her old Ford, waving through the window. Stacy lifted the hood, changed the oil, wiped her hands on a faded shop towel. She didn't talk much, but customers stayed longer than before. Some brought pie, or stories, or simply sat on the bench outside, letting the wind shuffle their hair. Inside, Maddie arranged postcards on the bulletin board. California beaches, Mount Rushmore, a plastic alligator from Florida. She pinned up a faded Little League photo, her own face barely visible behind her cap. Every so often, Stacy caught her daughter glancing at the rag doll on the counter. Maddie didn't carry it as much anymore, but she always made sure it was watching the front door. The doll's button eye was still missing, the mouth stitched tighter. The tape recorder inside stayed silent, batteries long dead. One afternoon, Stacy set up a folding table beneath the station's awning. She filled it with pitchers of lemonade, a tray of cookies, and a battered coin jar labeled Community Day. The word got out. A few neighborhood kids drifted in, Maddie among them, dragging a wiffle ball bat, cheeks streaked with dust. Stacy poured lemonade, taught a handful of children how to check tire pressure, how to listen for an engine's real story. She showed them the old photos on the wall, her father with his head thrown back in laughter, her mother's small, proud smile, the station lit up for 4th of July. "Why don't you just sell the place, Ms. Miller?" one boy asked, sticky with cookie crumbs. Stacy tightened a lug nut, the silver bracelet sliding down her wrist. She looked up, squinting into the sun. "Not all legacies are built on money," she said, her tone even. The kids considered this, not quite understanding but sensing there was something worth listening to. Later, when the crowd had thinned, Stacy found Maddie crouched beside the flower bed, poking a stick into the dirt. She knelt beside her, fingers sifting through the soil. A flag had fallen, its wooden stem splintered. Maddie nudged it toward her mother. It broke. Stacy twisted the flag into the earth, packing the dirt with her palm. "It still stands," she said. They sat together in silence, cars drifting by, the sun sliding lower over the lot. From the office window, the repaired bracelet caught the fading light, imperfect but still holding. Maddie reached for Stacy's hand, tracing the rough knot in the rubber band. The gas station was quieter at night, the air thick with honeysuckle and the faint tang of gasoline. Stacy tidied the counter, swept the floor, counted the register with careful fingers. She checked the locks twice, then sank onto the front steps, Maddie leaning against her side. The radio played old country songs, half-remembered tunes her father used to whistle when he worked late. Maddie hummed along under her breath, thumb hooked through her doll's belt loop. Lights glowed in windows up and down the street, neighbors closing up for the night. The world kept its distance, but it hadn't left them behind. The sky went orange, then purple, then a bruised blue. Maddie pointed to the horizon, her hand still small in Stacy's. "Will we always stay here?" she asked. Stacy didn't answer right away. She let the question drift between them, gentle and unhurried, settling like dust on the tile. She squeezed her daughter's hand, the rubber band cool and solid under her thumb, the silver of the bracelet warm from her skin. The night was thick with crickets, and the soft hum of passing cars. The flags in the flower bed fluttered, holding their place as the world grew dark. The first Saturday of July arrived with the heavy air of summer, the sun already burning off the dew from the cracked pavement out front. Stacy stood in the garage bay, hands wrapped around a mug of coffee, watching as cars lined up for gas. The line curved out to the street, headlights flickering between the blue and red bunting she and Maddie had strung along the fence at dawn. The radio in the office played a song she remembered from childhood, a twang of old country, the singer's voice crackling through static. Somewhere in the background, Maddie's laughter drifted from the far side of the lot, mingling with the hush and rise of weekend traffic. People moved in slow loops around the pumps, waving to neighbors, trading news, passing lemonade and plastic cups down the row. Flags snapped in the breeze, small and determined. A pair of toddlers rolled a red ball across the concrete, their shadows stretching in the high light. Inside, the walls of the office were covered with snapshots. A faded Polaroid of her father grinning at the first grand opening, a ribbon from Maddie's spelling bee, a newspaper clipping showing the station when it was still new. Above the counter, Stacy's mother's bracelet hung from the rearview mirror of the old cash register. Polished, the rubber band wound tight, a loop of silver that caught the sun every time the door swung open. Stacy wiped down the countertop, collecting loose coins and a handful of customer receipts. She sorted a pile of business cards, all with the same hand-scrawled "Thank you, Millers" on the back, and placed them in a mason jar beside the till. In the corner, an old man played dominoes with Maddie and a cluster of local kids, the tap and clatter of bones marking the slow passage of the afternoon. From time to time, someone would step into the office, lingering in the doorway. "Hard year for you, huh?" Stacy would nod, a small smile, her answer always simple. "We're still here." A group of city workers in blue shirts lined up for gas, their laughter echoing off the canopy. Elena arrived with a tray of cupcakes, her handshake brief but firm. James stopped by in the afternoon, leaning on the doorframe, eyes tired but bright. "Station looks good," he said. Stacy poured him coffee, shrugged. "Still a lot to do." Throughout the day, the sound of the radio and the steady hum of engines set the rhythm. Customers left change in the jar, notes of encouragement tucked beneath the glass. A family from out of town asked for directions, then lingered to let their kids feed the birds by the flower bed. No one mentioned the break-in, the police tape, or the rumors that had once choked the air. The past was there, folded into the walls, but it didn't own the day. When dusk crept in, the air softened, moths circling the porch lights. Maddie perched on the stoop, feet swinging, ragdoll on her lap. She watched the last of the cars fade down the highway, head resting against her mother's knee. Stacy locked the register, swept the dust from the threshold, then stepped outside to join her daughter. They sat together in the hush of evening, the bracelet on Stacy's wrist winking in the porch light, the old radio still playing somewhere behind them. Across the lot, people packed up folding chairs, tossed empty cups, called goodbyes through open windows. A group of teens wheeled bikes past the fence, shouting jokes into the dusk. The world seemed briefly larger and kinder, drawn together by nothing more than shared time and open space. Stacy watched it all, the quiet pride rising somewhere deep, built not on what had been lost, but on what had been patched together. The gas station had become something else. Not just a place to fill up or change oil, but a piece of the town's ordinary magic, a proof of endurance, a quiet center around which things turned. As darkness pooled at the edge of the lot, Stacy took the bracelet from her wrist and looped it over the mirror of the old Chevy by the pumps. The silver flashed once, catching the last of the sunset, a small, deliberate offering to whatever came next. She looked out over the station, the flags, the cars, the people still lingering in the warmth. Her voice was low, the words almost lost to the hum of insects and the fading country song. Sometimes, the hardest thing is to keep believing. She didn't say more. Instead, she watched Maddie trace circles in the dust with her shoe, the doll pressed close. She listened to the slow closing of doors, the calls of "see you next week," the persistent, hopeful rumble of life moving forward. And then, only the porch light, the bracelet swinging softly on the mirror, the quiet, open invitation to anyone who might need to hear it. Have you ever had to choose between what's right and what's easy? Between holding on and letting go? Leave your story here if you have one. And if you want to hear more, stick around. The next chapter is always just a day away.